Hey guys, I am Charlene and welcome to the Life with Impact podcast. It's very exciting that we get to actually have this podcast now available Spotify and Apple and on our website. And I think it's just such a great platform for us to share tools and equip people and inspire and encouraging others. It's such a great platform for that. So thank you for joining us on this podcast. Today is week 2 of this powerful parenting series that we're doing. And I'm joined here by special guest, Nicole Daniel. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Charlene. Very excited to be here today.
It's actually so nice when you get to have a few conversations because you can get really into it and around the same topic. Now, Nicole is a qualified social worker with over 12 years experience. And she has also founded You Matter Therapeutic Support. She works a lot with parents and children in many different settings. But what I love most about you is that there is a real authentic connection that you have to parents because you're a parent yourself. And even for you and me, we've got kids similar ages, so we're not just talking theoretically, we're saying, hey, we know it's hard, but you can do it, and here's some tools to help you along the way. So last week, we spoke about building meaningful relationships with our kids, and I love that conversation and just how important it is to connect with your kids. Let's not try to toughen them up for the real and the big world, but let's connect with them. Let's make sure they know that they're safe and loved and that they belong. And so if you want to go and watch or listen to that episode, it's on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. We can send you those links if you get in touch with us, but go and have a look. It's really great to go back to, and I believe it's a resource that parents will be able to use. You keep going back to it. But let's get to today's topic. Week 2 is all about navigating emotions. So Nicole, we're going to dive right in. Nicole, please can you explain to us just a little bit about today's topic?
No, of course. Thank you so much, Charlene. I think this is one of the topics that I feel so very passionate about because, there are so many different perceptions about emotions. Whenever we speak to parents or speak to kids, there is so many different kinds of inputs of whether they feel emotions are useful or useless or frustrating. Some of them feel that it's a waste of time. So really, there's so many different perspectives about emotions. And I feel like at the heart of it, emotions shape everything. And so this is one of the areas that I really, like I say, feel passionate about because it's overlooked so many times and so often dismissed. And so I'm really excited to be sharing about that. And I think it's just important to reiterate that we need that connection with our kids. We need that connection with our kids if we are hoping to actually journey with them through their emotions. And I think that's why we called this episode The Sea of Emotions, because it is like uncharted waters. You never know really what you're expecting on any given day. And I think, my heart is just about equipping parents and making sense of what emotions are all about. But we need that connection. Without it, we cannot really be involved and engaged with our kids to help them on such a sensitive area if we're not building those relationships.
Yeah.
So I think it's so important to have that as a foundation and then to just be aware of your own perceptions as a parent. How do you feel about emotions and how do you deal with them? Because one thing I've learned is we cannot expect our kids to cope emotionally, but we don't even do it. We're not modeling that behavior. So I think, that's one of the things that we really need to just look at in the next. We're actually going to covering emotions during this episode and in the next episode as well, because it's such a huge topic. And I think just if we can start today with just acknowledging our emotions and acknowledging our kids' emotions, I think that's a fantastic start.
No, I so agree. And last year, I just had this realization one day, this thought pop into my head that, oh my goodness, most of my parenting happens when I'm not saying anything. And that's quite a terrifying thought because our kids watch what we do. They watch how we interact with other people. And that's why I love what you say, that it starts with us. And so a lot of this work that you're doing is, okay, how do I feel about emotions? Because remember, we all grew up with very traditional conservative view around emotions, good, or happy is good, sad is bad. And we now know better. We know that emotions are so important, and that they're a biological phenomenon. They're not they're not just you can change how you feel. So yeah, Nicole, talk a bit more about that, the value of emotions, and I know you'll get into the biology of emotions also a bit later.
Yeah, so I think just understanding that really emotions shape our daily life, whether we like it or not. And, as we say, we'll discuss emotions biologically later, but we can't change it. Emotions are there whether we like it or not. And so we do, as parents as well, have that choice, whether we're going to figure it out or just trudge through and push them aside and, really dismiss them and end up with consequences that could be lifelong. And so I think, emotions are so important because they are with us every single day. They influence how we perceive our experiences, how we respond to other people. They help us in terms of building relationships and connections. So without really understanding and giving them the space to exist, the impact is astronomical. If we look at, for example, just, as I say, just understanding that the way that we navigate our emotions, the way that we perceive them, the way that we handle them, it impacts on the way that we perceive ourselves, the way we perceive our loved ones, the way we perceive the relationship. So emotions are really at the forefront of everything.
Yeah, and as Dr. Susan David says, emotions are information. They are telling us something, and we need to actually get curious about it. What's behind this emotion? Not just suppress it, but actually say, hey, I'm feeling angry right now. What is the cause of this? What am I angry about? Only if you can do that, then you can actually deal with it, identify, and then deal with it. But Nicole's the expert, so you're going to explain that a bit more to us. Maybe you can explain the biology of it, because there's obviously a reason God created us with the ability to have emotions. So they must be there for a reason. So would you explain just the basics so we can understand the framework or the foundation of this?
Thank you. So the reason why I refer a lot to the biology of emotions is because, as I say, sometimes people feel that emotions is this abstract construct that, it's just a frame of mind, and it's actually just something that's frustrating that we don't need to have, that we can either just suppress or shove aside. But the moment we actually really realize that there is a biological component to emotions, it gives us a different perspective to understand that they're there. Like I said, whether we like it or not, they're there. So best we deal with it and learn how to. And really, I think it's so important to just make sense of that, because it gives us a sense of, I feel, a sense of acceptance, a little bit more tolerance to understand that whatever your child, whatever you are going through, it's biological, and that we can actually navigate through this. And so one of the things when we look at the biology of emotions, one of the things that we need to look at is obviously taking into account the brain's development. And so we know that when the brain develops, your brainstem develops first, and then there's an area of the brain called the limbic system. Now, the limbic system, I always explain to younger kids, because I work with children across the lifespan. I talk to kids about, inside out. And so I say to them that limbic system is like headquarters. And so we really want to navigate headquarters as best as possible and not put headquarters under lockdown, because the minute we do that, there's repercussions to it. And so the limbic system is the area of the brain that is responsible for emotions. And after the limbic system is developed, what we call the prefrontal cortex develops later. And that is our thinking, our reasoning area of the brain. And why I find it so incredible is because when children are in their toddler phase, the limbic system is being developed. And that's why they're thinking emotional. They are little emotional centers running around. And I find it so incredible because then the brain develops, as I say, the prefrontal cortex. And what is so awesome is when kids go through their teenage years, the brain does a nice U-turn and further develops the limbic system. And that's why our teens are so emotional. And for them, when they're experiencing something, it is intense for them. But it's because they're functioning from their limbic system. So another great part of the limbic system is the amygdala. And the amygdala is our threat detection. So that's responsible for our fight and our flight. So the incredible thing about understanding the brain's development is if our amygdala is experiencing threat, which is like your stress, your anxiety, but if it's experiencing threat, we call it an amygdala hijack. And your prefrontal cortex, your thinking, your logic, your reason goes offline. It's switched off. And so your brain is in absolute survival. It's just keeping your body and your brain alive. And so we can't, when a child is experiencing, I don't call them meltdowns or anything like that. I call them wobbles. And so when our kids are experiencing these wobbles, we cannot reason, negotiate, and we can't do that with them because they don't have that ability. And so the trick is to actually help them calm down their nervous system. And then once we've done that, then we can further help them. Once we've regulated that, we can work with building that relationship and then only then reasoning with them.
I mean, that makes so much sense because for every parent ever who tried to calm their children down, I do use the word meltdown, but I like wobble better. It sounds a bit more kinder to the child a bit. But for any parents who's trying to calm down a child, you know that when they're in that state, all it does is make it way worse.
Yes.
And then you get frustrated and they get frustrated, and then before you know it, it's like World War III, you know.
Yes.
So I think it's so good what you're saying is that there's a part of their brain that is switched off. They cannot reason. And so we need to actually allow them to calm down first and then go back later. And it's happened a lot. I just haven't had the theory maybe or the know-how, but it is true that if you go back later, they're a lot more receptive to the lesson, to the moment. I just think as a parent, you just want to suppress bad behavior.
Yes.
You know, you want like an immediate result, like stop embarrassing me.
Yes.
We're in the shop, like stop screaming. But
I think, sorry, if I can add on it, I think that's what's so amazing about it is if we can take that moment to step back and realize that this situation is happening. You're in it now. And I always say to parents, we are all going to fall. We're all going to fall. But it's how you rise that makes the difference. So we are, because of our own emotions, our own experiences, we're wanting to, have them just be contained. But sometimes that is not possible. Sometimes that's not possible. So I think that's why I say we need to be able to be so aware of ourselves in the space that we're in so that when we're working with our kids, we know how to do it.
Yeah. So I think as we end off this conversation, we're going to talk more about emotions in the next episode. But what is something we can do to support our kids in these moments? How could we actually help them? There's many ways, and it can be very complicated. But maybe you can just give us something that we could do just to help our kids.
Okay, so I think when we look at just supporting them in those moments where things are really tough, and it's not to say that they have to have a huge wobble. I think whatever they are facing, the first thing is just to be there. They have to know that you are present and available. And so sometimes they don't necessarily need the quick fixes. They don't want the solutions at that time. They just want to be seen and heard. So it doesn't matter whether your child is 5 or your child is 13, your kids just want to be seen. They want to know that whatever they're going through, it must be tough. They just want to know that you get it. That even though you're not in that situation with them, because people so often feel like someone else can't possibly understand what they're going through. And I think in those moments, and we'll definitely expand on it later in the next episode, but I think if we can just have that chance to say, I can see this is really tough for you. I'm here when you're ready. And really just to be there when they are ready. And timing is impeccable. Timing is essential. We need to then be there for them. That is crucial. And I think one of the ways that we can start supporting them is understanding, the vagus nerve is incredible. And the vagus nerve is responsible for our rest and digest. And so when we're looking at a state of calm or looking at emotional regulation, and I'll definitely give more practical steps in the next episode, but if we can look at just strengthening that vagus nerve, which is responsible for emotional regulation, that'll help us already. And it's things I'm huge on being practical. I think it's also just my temperament. And I am a very busy person. So I feel I want to have something that is practical that I can use every day that will cover as many things as possible. So I think if we can already start with just strengthening that vagus nerve, we're already getting a good head start and acknowledging the space that they're in. So we can do this by, and it sounds so strange, but doing things like humming and singing and gargling, because the vagus nerve runs very much in your throat as well and close to your vocal cords. Anything that encourages that or stimulates your vagus nerve. And so what we're looking at is having a strong vagal tone. So whether it is you are massaging your neck or having a massage done, or you are gargling, like I say, or singing or humming, whether you are laughing, whether you are doing neck stretches, whether you're doing very deep breathing, these are all techniques that we can do regularly. So as I say, I'm big on making things practical. So what I would suggest, or what I would encourage parents to do, is they should try it as well. I'm big on them. Must do whatever works for them and encourage their kids, because they do learn through what we are showing them. But gargle. Once you've brushed your teeth in the morning, gargle. While you're on your way to school, see if you can hum. Bring these things in practically so that we can strengthen that vagus nerve.
Yeah, I really, really love that. And I want to encourage you as parents, because I think when you're in the thick of it, when you're in survival, when you have young kids, because that's often what it feels like. I just want to get through the day. And I just find it's really helpful to even just pick one thing, even if it's for this week, write it on a piece of paper and put it on your fridge so you can go back to it. Remember to gargle, remember to whatever, just put something where you can see it. I think we need to be intentional about this, but we don't have to change everything in a day, because that can be overwhelming and not very sustainable. You try to do everything in one day and then you're like, yeah, I'm never doing this again. But maybe try to implement one thing. And so I think also, as we go through this series, make some notes, things that stand out to you where you're at the moment. And I think there are just so many practical tools that are highlighted. But Nicole, we're going to talk more about emotions next week. Maybe you can give us a little, like a hint at what next week is about.
Yeah, so next week we're going to really be speaking about emotional regulation and just making sense of emotional intelligence. So during the next episode, we'll be speaking a lot more about how to actually support your own regulation and to support your children.
Great. Thank you so much, Nicole. It's been so great chatting to you, and I'm encouraged as a mom, and I'm so encouraged to see my children as whole beings, not just try to suppress behavior because it's irritating or embarrassing or I don't know what to do with it, but to consider that God has made them as whole beings, and I need to be aware of that. So thank you. We'll be back next week with the third episode in the series, all about building emotional intelligence and continuing talking about emotional regulation. Thanks, Nicole. Do tune in to next week's episode. We'll be sharing these episodes live, or a snippet from it at least, live on my show on a Thursday at 11:15. And you can go and view full episodes on YouTube or listen on wherever you can find podcasts. Apple, Spotify, and then also on our website or our app. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Charlene.